Okay, wait. Before we talk about this new option, we need to go through everything that has changed in the project first. Because before I explain how this works, there are a few other things I need to show you. First of all, since the last devlog, the channel has grown a lot. We are now over 800 subscribers, which is honestly insane, and the Discord has more than 200 members now. Because all of this support, new contributors have joined the project. And whenever I start feeling a bit tired or lose motivation, I see people commenting, joining the Discord and talking about the game. It really helps me keeping working on it whenever I have free time. I tried to reply to almost every comment on the last video, but it got a bit out of hand because there was so many. I really can't thank you enough for all the support. For me, the best way to thank you is to make a real game that feels close to the game we grew up playing. So in this video, I'm going to show you some of the improvements we've been working on. You can still join the Discord too. People there are always sharing ideas, suggestions and feedback. Sometimes it might look like I'm a bit hard on suggestions because I refuse some of them. But most of the time it's because they don't really fit the Legacy of Goku 2 or Boost Fury style we're trying to follow. Some suggestions are also more suited for the end of the game or post-game content, while now we are still building the main game from scratch. Every movement, every animation, every system and every small detail has to be made from zero. There is no template or existing base we can just use, but I still really appreciate everyone taking the time to write down their ideas. Even when I don't use a suggestion exactly as it was written, it can still inspire smaller ideas or features that might surprise you when you finally play the game. So again, feel free to join the Discord, and now let's start the video. Let's talk about sprites. If you joined the Discord, you probably know that some internal problems from the project became public, and that one of the contributors working on the sprites left the team. Because of that, some of the sprites and animations you've seen in previous previews won't be making it into the final game. This includes things like Kid Goku's running animation and some of his special attacks. They will all be replaced. Basically, the former contributor only wanted the sprites to be used while he remained on the project. From my point of view, I couldn't agree to that. Imagine if this happens near the end of the development, when the game was almost ready to release. Having to suddenly remake months of sprites work could put the entire project at risk. So I made the decision to replace everything now rather than much later. At first, I thought this was a huge setback, but after talking with the team, we actually started seeing it as an opportunity to improve the game's visual. Before remaking anything, we stopped and asked ourselves how we wanted the new sprites to look. We went back to the making of a video for Legacy of Goku 2, where one of the original sprite artists talked about how the characters were created for the game. We used that as an inspiration to better understand the proportions, poses and overall feeling of the original games. Komoru, one of the new contributors, started by reworking Bulma. This is the result. Her pose now feels more natural, her design is less stiff, and she fits the style we wanted for the game much better. She also has now different outfits that follow the actual story, including her pajamas and her bunny outfit. And Bulma isn't the only character being reworked. Our first boss was previously teased, but because this will be the first real boss fight in the game, we want it to be something players will remember. So Virgo started redrawing it completely from scratch, and here is a small teaser of what we are working on. Of course, all of this takes time. Everyone helping with the game is doing it during their free time, and they have their own lives. There are no deadlines for them, and I don't want anyone to feel pressured. While the final sprites are being worked on, I'll continue using placeholders so I can keep building the game without stopping development. So in a weird way, what looked like a bad new might actually end up making the game even better. Of course, we always look for new contributors. If you feel like you can join the project, you can post in the contribute section. Any help is welcome. Now let's talk about a new feature that will be important to follow your progress in the game. I added a new quest system. As you can see, there are now two different tabs. I also changed the color a little so they match the style used in Boost Fury. Here you can see the first quest of the game, find something to eat, which fits Kid Goku pretty well. If you press right, you can check your completed quest. Since there is the first quest of the game, of course there is nothing here yet. Later there will be more main quests, and also side quests. The little star next to the quest will have a different color depending on if it's part of the main story or just a side quest. The next thing that changed is the controller support. The game already supported controllers because Godot handles that natively, but the button prompts were not very clear. Instead of showing the actual button, it will sometimes just display something generic like pad, which could get really confusing. Since more actions will be added later and many of them will be bound to different buttons, I decided to rework how the controllers are displayed in the game. Now when you use a controller, the game shows the actual button you need to press. Here I'm using a Logitech F310, which has a layout similar to an Xbox controller. When I bind an action to one of the triggers or buttons, the correct icon now appears in the game. Some controllers might still not be detected perfectly, but if that becomes a problem later, I can update the system to support them. For most controllers, it should work fine. If you played Legacy of Goku 2, and I know most of you did, you probably remember some really annoying flying enemies. They fly away from you, stay out of reach, and then suddenly dash into you to attack. So of course I wanted to recreate that annoying feeling. Here we can see the new flying enemy AI. When you get close, the enemy will try to fly away and recreate some distance. Once it's far enough, it will turn around and dash directly at you, dealing damages if it hits. After attacking, it will move away and prepare for another dash. Since it's flying, it can move over objects and areas that Goku cannot always reach. Sometimes it can even leave the main part of the map for a moment, so you will have to wait for it to come back and attack. It might be annoying, but that is part of the idea. Now imagine being surrounded by 3 or 4 enemies like this at the same time. Trust me, some fights are going to be really difficult. One of the new things I wanted to improve was Kid Goku movements. Since he can't really fly at this point in the story, I wanted to find another way to make moving around the maps more fun. When you go back to the manga, you often see Goku jumping across mountains, hills and cliffs, so I thought it could be cool to use that idea in the game, and here is the result. In some areas, you will find these jump points. If you stand on one and interact with it, Goku will automatically jump to the other side. I also added a sound effect inspired by the original Dragon Ball anime to make the jump feel a bit more fun. This adds a new type of level design that wasn't really present in the Legacy of Goku 2 or Buse Fury. To go back, you just interact with the jump point again. You might notice that Goku turns orange during the animation. That is just because I'm still using placeholders, since the final jumping animations are not ready yet. I also wanted to connect the system with the level gates from the original games. Some jump points will have numbers on them, and that number represents the level you need to use them. So for example, if an area is designed to bring you close to level 10, reaching level 10 could unlock a new path, a hidden item or even a completely new part of the map. This means some maps could become much bigger over time, because you might return later and discover areas that were previously blocked. If your level is too low and you try to interact with the jump point, nothing will happen and Goku will just throw a punch. But once you reach the correct level, the game will let you jump across. I also thought it could be cool to have some automatic double jumps. You don't control the height of Goku jumps yourself, so in some places the movement is divided into 2 jumps instead of 1. It doesn't unlock anything special, it's mostly visual, but I think it makes following Goku through the environment feel more dynamic. Another big thing I worked on is the launcher for Legacy of Goku Origins. Is it completely necessary right now? Not really. But first of all, I think having a launcher makes the game feel more like a real full game. At the bottom, you have buttons for the Discord, YouTube, the future website, and the launcher settings. But the launcher is not only here for the look. It is connected to the game files on GitHub. Every time you open it, it checks if your version of the game is up to date. So let's say I release the game and later we find a serious bug. Maybe your character gets stuck somewhere or something breaks your progress. Instead of asking everyone to download the entire game again, I can upload a small update and the launcher will download it automatically. The launcher can also update itself. So if I change the background, add new buttons or improve something later, you won't need to download the launcher manually. For now, everything will be hosted through GitHub because it's free and I don't want to start paying for servers before the game is even released. Of course, free hosting has some limits. If the project becomes much bigger and too many people are downloading updates, then later I could buy a domain and create a proper website. That website could host the game files, the launcher updates, and maybe even a small wiki with information about the game. But for now, GitHub should be enough. The settings are pretty simple. You can open the game folder, open logs folder, close the launcher when the game starts, check for updates when the launcher opens, or launch the game automatically. I recommend keeping the update check enabled, so you always have the latest version before playing. So tell me what you think. Do you prefer having a launcher that automatically updates the game, or would you rather download a new version manually every time I release an update? Okay, let's finally talk about items. Here we can see a new enemy. I stopped using the bandit here because I wanted to add a bit more enemy variety. When you defeat an enemy, it can drop different items, each with its own drop rate. It can also drop nothing at all, so it really depends on your luck. Some items can be common, while other can be extremely rare. So for certain items, you might have to defeat the same enemy several times before finally getting one. Let's defeat this enemy and see what happens. As you can see, the item has a small bounce animation when it drops. It's not exactly like the original games, but I think it works pretty well. The game also checks where the item is landing. If it's too close to a wall or another object, it will try to move it somewhere safer, so it doesn't get stuck in a place where you can't pick it up. I also changed how picking up enemy drops works. I didn't want a text box to appear every time you collect something because that will constantly interrupt the combat. So for normal enemy drops, you will only hear a small sound effect when you collect the item. But for rare or import items, the game can still display a text box like this. About this item, what do you think they are for? You can see now the enemy dropped some raw meat. In Buzzfury, enemies could sometimes drop things like cans or rice balls. I never really thought that made much sense for every enemy, especially in a game focused on Kid Goku. Legacy of Goku 2 was a bit simpler, with enemies mainly dropping meat or energy orbs, so I wanted to mix both ideas. Some enemies can drop useful items directly, while animals can drop things like raw meat, bones, venom, or other materials. Some of these items might restore a small amount of health by themselves, but I thought it would be more interesting if you could also use them to create better items. Before we do that, let's quickly look at the item menu. The menu has been changed a little. You can now see the selection arrow inspired by Buzzfury. The colors are a bit more appealing and the tabs now use the same style as the quest menu. You can move through the different categories and check all the items you collected. And now that we have this raw meat, let's finally go back to the new menu option from the beginning of the video. Let's try to cook it. So here we are in the new cooking menu. Of course, this UI can still change, but this is the general idea. On the left, you can see all the items that can be transformed. The game checks which items are used in an actual recipe, so if an item cannot be cooked, it simply won't appear here. On the right, you can see the result. But since we never made this recipe before, the game doesn't tell us exactly what we're going to get. Again, this is still an early version, and many things can change, but here is the result. When I press the interaction button, a small text box appears and shows the new items we just made. We used our raw meat and it has now been transformed into grilled meat. Let's go back to the item menu. If I select the raw meat, you can see that it restores only 5 HP. But if I select the grilled meat, it now restores 15 HP. And that is basically the purpose of cooking. You can use simple materials by themselves, but cooking them will turn them into much more useful items. You may have also noticed that I added the HP and key bars inside of the item menu. This way you can directly see what your character needs before using an item. It's a small addition, but I think it makes the menu more useful. If I go back to the cooking menu now, I can cook my last raw meat. And now there is nothing left to cook because I already used my raw meats. The raw meats are now removed from my inventory, and the new crate meat has been added instead. For now, this is only the level 1 version of the campfire. You use one ingredient and transform it into a better item. Later in the game, you will be able to unlock a level 2 campfire. This will allow you to combine ingredients and create stronger meals. I don't want to show too much about that yet, because I want to keep some surprise for the next videos. The main goal is to make these materials useful during the entire game. A basic item that restores 5 HP might be useful at the beginning, but later it won't really help you anymore. With cooking, those materials can still be turned into better items as you progress. It also gives me the possibility to add more enemy drops, more receipts, and more reasons to explore the world. And that is basically everything for this update. As always, everything you've seen is still a work in progress. Things can change and things can always be improved. The best way to support the project is by liking the video, leaving a comment, sharing it with someone who might enjoy the game, and joining the Discord. All of your comments and support really help me staying motivated and continue working on the project whenever I have free time. And to thank all of you for the support on the last video, I have one small teaser to show you. So enjoy the rest of the video and I'll see you soon.